Hi, my name is Matthew Myers. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch my video and hear about what I have to say around service animals in the workplace. Initially, I felt as though companies should not look at the service dogs under the reasonable accommodations clause in law. I originally felt that if a person is deemed to need a service dog, they should be able to bring their service dog to work. What changed my mind is how grossly abused service animals or comfort animals are used on airlines. In the news, I've seen people trying to bring on chickens and pigs, and most recently a peacock. That all being said, while there are instances on an airline that an animal should be brought on, I believe there did need to be a line drawn in the sand to end the abuse. What concerns me about allowing service animals in the medically charged instances is the gray areas that presents and certain abuse that will take place. That all being said, I would support it under reasonable and obvious circumstances within the workplace. One of the ways I would promote acceptance and support is by helping my company understand why service dogs are so important and what would happen without that support. The second way that I would promote this and gain that support is by having individuals share their stories about how those service animals have helped them in the past. And lastly, I would like to let others experience what it feels like to not have that support through an in-depth simulation. Here's a story I researched about an individual with a service dog in the workplace. His name is Marshall Garber. And Marshall Garber has been dependent on a wheelchair ever since being paralyzed by a spinal cord injury over 6 years ago. If you've never sat in a wheelchair and pushed a wheelchair around, you aren't going to realize how difficult that is. Last year, after an extensive search, Garber got a dog and trained it to pull his wheelchair. It proved so helpful. Garber started using the dog at work in Kennedy Krager and the East Baltimore institution that specializes in spinal cord injury. At one time, Garber had been he had been a patient. They basically said to his dog Scooby that it was just a pet, and he had and it is not essential to his job, and I'm not going to be able to use him anymore, he said. Several months after Garber started using his dog at work, he was told the dog would no longer be allowed. Service animals are treated as any other accommodation, that is, if they are needed, unless it is undue hardship on the employer, they are permitted. Service animals are treated, we determined, the company, that his pet, which may or may not have been a service animal, was not a necessary accommodation for him to complete his job-related responsibilities. However, we did, over the course of his employment, make reasonable accommodations at his request to help him perform his work duties more comfortably. Garber resigned from his job, and he left with his dog and moved to another state. As a leader, I would have absolutely let Garber bring his dog to work. It is clear that this is not an issue with abuse of the policy, kind of like I mentioned with the airlines. And I would have advocated for him to continue gaining that support. The 3 ways I mentioned earlier would help drive that adoption, reinforce that support, and would also help him move forward with the support he needed from his service dog. Thank you again for taking the time to watch my video. I appreciate it and look forward to your comments.